draft starts in Mobile. Welcome into our Senior Bowl coverage brought to you by Southeast Michigan Ford Dealers. I'm Tori Petry, and I've got Tim Twentyman with me here in Alabama all week covering the action in Mobile. The first practices kicked off on Tuesday. But before we get into talking about Senior Bowl week, let's talk about the guys who will be making decisions from Senior Bowl week. That's new Lions GM Brad Holmes and new Lions head coach Dan Campbell. We'll start with Brad first, Tim. Obviously, we watched those press conferences last week. We heard from them. We covered all the news last week. But now that the news has had a little bit of time to settle, what do you make of the new Lions GM?
Well, I like it. He was well thought of throughout the league, was in that GM interview process. And it just seemed to all fit with the Lions' vision and his vision coming together. And I think that's an important thing when you're talking about, he said retooling, but obviously the news with Matthew Stafford seeking a trade, you're going to have to – it's a little bit of a rebuild. You're going to have to figure out that position and all the pieces connected with it and how they're going to reshape this roster. But I think he's the right man for the job. You just look at what the Rams have done and how much success they have had, building a young team and building it through the draft. And that's what Brad talked about. And look, they were terrific in Los Angeles doing that over the years. And you just look at the names, right? The Jared Goffs and the Cooper Kupps and Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald were here at the Senior Bowl, right? And those were two guys that the Los Angeles Rams evaluated, drafted, and now they've become key parts to that football team. So, I like the hire because his whole career has been based in the college evaluation, and he wants to build a young team. He wants to build it through the draft. So what better than to hire a guy who's got that kind of experience within an organization that's shown year over year that they can evaluate talent, get it in their building, and develop it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he will be collaborating on that roster with the head coach, which is a little bit of a different structure, I suppose, than it has been for the Lions in the past. Those two will collaborate. That means Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell will be working together on making this roster come together. Tim, you and I both reacted on Twitter, on social media, through some of our other content this last week, but we got to watch that press conference with Dan Campbell. I was in the room for it, and let me tell you, Tim, it was insane. You wanted to run through a wall when it was over with.
It's energy,
yeah.
Right? It's energy, excitement, enthusiasm. You can use all the adjectives you want, but that's Dan Campbell,
Yeah.
And the one thing that people said about Dan, who I talked to, is said, look, he's going to be able to develop a terrific coaching staff because guys are going to want to come and coach for him. And that was kind of the energy that he showed in that press conference, right? Just excitement. And some of his former players in New Orleans, guys not even on his side of the ball. Armstead, their tackle, was like, you run through a brick wall for Dan Campbell. And you guys saw it there at the press conference and the energy that he brings. But there's a respect factor, too. And look, he played in the NFL for 11 years. And I got a chance to talk to him before that press conference. And one of the things he said to me was, look, I tell the players, guess what? You're going to love it that I'm a former player. Guess what? You're going to hate it because I'm a former player, because I know what you guys go through, and I know that you can give a little bit more. And so I think that's the mentality that Dan Campbell's going to bring. There's going to be an excitement and an energy, but guess what? He also said guys are going to be held accountable as well. And so I think all that will lead to a good environment in Allen Park and hopefully a winning one.
Well, he's starting to put that staff together. Of course, there are reports out there. The one that has been made official is his new defensive coordinator, who he's bringing in over from New Orleans. That's Saints secondary coach Aaron Glenn. Tim, what did you think of that first announced hire?
Yeah, good get for Dan. Yeah, he was a guy that was popular. He was interviewing, even for head coaches. I mean, that's how well thought of he was throughout the league. And so, look, again, like Dan, a former player, right? 5'9", 180 nothing, right? Plays however many Pro Bowl, All-Pro years, 41 career interceptions. And so, again, like we talked about with Dan, he brings that instant credibility to players, right? Because here's a guy who did it for a long time at a really high level. And then you look at the success the New Orleans Saints have had in their secondary and on defense. They've been one of the better secondaries in the league for the past few years. Guys like Marshawn Lattimore, developing a guy like that. When you look at the parallels there with Jeff Okudah, you've got to love that.
Sure.
As Lions fans. Here's a guy that turned Marshawn Lattimore into an all-pro, Pro Bowl type player early in his career. Can he do the same thing with Jeff Okudah? You've got to just his background, both as a player and coaching, seems like a home run hire.
Well, that's what we have to talk about as far as coaching staff hires for now. Tim, there are many more to be made official.
There will be
still.
more made official here, I think, as the week trickles on. Some reports there, but they're just not signed on the dotted line just quite yet.
Well, we will get to those once they do become official. But Tim, this weekend's news was crazy because you had the announcement of Aaron Glenn, and really just minutes later, a bit of tough news for Lions fans that Matthew Stafford and the Detroit Lions would be looking to part ways this offseason. Certainly a tough piece of news to hear for a lot of Lions fans who have cheered on Matthew Stafford's career over the course of his years in Detroit. Tim, what was your reaction to that news?
It's time. Yeah, it's time. And look, Matthew has been terrific for this organization for 12 years. First-round pick in 2009. You see all the records he has, right? Passing, completions, touchdowns, everything. It's Matthew Stafford at the top of every quarterback list in franchise history. But the one thing that there wasn't enough was wins. And I think Matthew would be the first one to admit that as well if you talk to him. No playoff wins. And, I think with a new regime coming in, Brad talked about wanting to get younger, right? Wanting to build a young football team. And so I think this just makes sense for both parties. Matthew's going to be 33 this year. Look, give him an opportunity to go somewhere else and maybe change the narrative to the end of his career. And for the Lions, now you start to rebuild under a new regime, and that quarterback position is important. I mean, you look around the league, some young guys that come in, and in 2-3 years they can completely change the organization. Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. We obviously know what Patrick Mahomes has done. Allen in Buffalo, right? All these young guys, now all these teams that are playing in the conference championships were these young guys that were drafted and now they've become their franchise. And so I think that's the way the Lions want to go. They want to try to maybe find their next young guy, their guy that can be that franchise guy that can, lead them to playoff wins and a few more wins overall.
Certainly. Well, a big piece of news for sure, but that does transition us very well into talking about Senior Bowl week here in Mobile, because there are a few young players that you and I will have our eyes on. Let's start there with that natural transition, the quarterback position.
Got to get the notebook out
now.
A
lot of really good ones here down in Mobile. What do you make of that position?
Well, you obviously look at the quarterback position coming in. It's Trevor Lawrence, right, and Justin Fields and Zach Wilson, and then you get guys like Mac Jones, who's here down in Mobile. And so the Alabama quarterback, national champion, you look at the statistics, they were off the charts, right? But now you get a chance to see him outside of that Alabama element, right? And so this is a perfect platform for him to prove he's got some of those athletic traits that maybe, some of the scouts and analysts question, and he can step in and into a new situation and excel. But then really quarterbacks 4, 5, probably Mac Jones is 4 or 5 through 8 are all down here. I mean, you got names like Sam Ehlinger from Texas, Ian Book, Notre Dame, Felipe Franks, Kyle Trask, a guy I know you know pretty well.
Hey, I know him.
Kellen Mond from Texas A&M. I mean, these are all the guys that are going to be in that group past maybe the top 4 guys. And so if you're looking for a quarterback in day 2, let's say the Lions don't spend the number 7 pick or whatever they get for Matthew Stafford on a quarterback, all these guys that are going to be day 2 guys are here today to evaluate. So what a terrific opportunity for any team that's looking for a quarterback down here at the Senior Bowl. That really second group of guys are all here competing against each other. It'll be a good showcase for those guys, certainly.
Okay, obviously a lot more to watch than just the quarterbacks. That one sticks out, obviously, because of the news from the weekend. But Tim, what other position groups do you have your eye on here in Mobile?
Well, the wide receivers, and that's obviously pertinent to Detroit. They've only got 2 wide receivers under contract for next year. And so you expect that group to have a little bit of a reshape this offseason. And, you got to start with the Heisman Trophy winner. It's not often that the Heisman Trophy winner comes down to the Senior Bowl. Now, he's still dealing with that finger injury he suffered in the national championship, so he's not going to compete in practice. But, look, he's going through the Miami Dolphins meetings. He's going to interview with all 32 teams. And so the Lions representatives will get a chance to interview him and start that process with him as well. But there's a number of other guys, Tylan Wallace, Oklahoma State, Kadarius Toney, another Florida guy, really, really good. One of Trask's favorite receivers. And then a guy kind of a little closer to my heart here, a guy who, where I'm going with this.
Now we're getting yours.
Dwayne Eskridge, right? Really speedy guy out of Western Michigan University, former track star, state champion. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's a little bit under the radar coming in, but his speed is a difference maker. And so I think there's just a ton of wide receivers. We saw that class last year was really, really good. I think this one rivals it. Maybe not quite there, but there's a number of really talented wide receivers, and a lot of those guys are down here. So that's another group I'll take a look at this week. And then, obviously, you got to look at the pass rushers as well. You know, this is a Lions team that was last in points allowed, last in overall defense. They didn't pressure the quarterback enough. And so, you know, guys like Carl Spasham Jr. from Wake Forest, Patrick Jones from Pittsburgh, his running mate Rashad Weaver from Pittsburgh, those were one of the two best kind of edge rushing combinations in college football last year. Both those guys are down here. And then probably the best defensive tackle, senior defensive tackle at least in this draft, Washington's Levi Onwuzurike from, and that's an important one too because he opted out of the year. And so what's so great about the Senior Bowl this year is, look, scouts weren't able to go to campuses like they do every week, right? And then you had a shortened schedule, and then you had cancellations, and then you had opt-outs. And so I think a lot of the scouts and teams are maybe a little bit behind on the evaluation of some of these guys. And so that's why this is such an important week for the opt-out guys and for all those other prospects looking to just kind of, you know, prop themselves up, and teams are going to take a real close look because this is really the first opportunity to kind of catch up on some of the evaluation they lost because it was such a crazy college football season.
And even more important because there is no in-person physical combine this year in Indianapolis.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Another one too, they're all
important.
doing regional and stuff like that. So, you know, you can look great, you know, running a 40 by yourself and stuff, but this is where you get to compete against the top talent. I mean, you go to a Senior Bowl practice and you go to the pass rushing drills, the offensive line versus defensive lineman, and it's hilarious because the whole stadium, all the coaches and everybody, as soon as they start, everybody just rolls over there to those pass rushing drills, right? Because it's man on man, right? It's best on best. You're going against the best, and it's not you in shorts running drills and doing stuff in space. It's you competing against another player who's just as good as you. And I think it gives such a terrific evaluation. I think that's why the Senior Bowl is so important because really talent evaluators just value those practices so much because it's man on man, best on best, right?
Well, that's why the tagline is the draft starts in Mobile. Tim and I are obviously not done from here in Alabama. We've got more coverage coming for you later on this week, so check out DetroitLions.com as the week goes on to catch all of our coverage from the Reese Senior Bowl.